So Trevor Phillips, welcome to Gold Mines. How are you?
I'm fine, Jess. Thank you so much. As I think I often say to people, it's great to have the title, but I usually only produce it when I've got a horse and a damsel in distress with me.
Well, the horse is outside, right? No, it's great to have you on the podcast today. And I'm really excited to delve into your background and your upbringing and what life has been like for you. But for our audience, could you just tell us a little bit about you and your upbringing before we go into your work and what you've been doing for many, many years?
Well, probably the most important thing to understand, I guess, about me, and anybody from a large family will understand this, is that I am the 10th child of 10 children.
Yes.
And therefore, frankly, I grew up with nobody caring very much, except to tell me to keep quiet and in the corner. My family came from what was then British Guyana, which was, I suppose, the quietest backwater of colonial backwaters. And they came in 1950. My sister, who had wanted to be a teacher, but for reasons that are kind of common in those times, it wasn't a possibility available to her. But what she could become is a nurse, but she had to come here to train. So she and my father came, and then the rest of the family came, and then I was born here. But I think, like a lot of families from my background, your own to some extent, it wasn't so much that life was difficult. Life was difficult for everybody post-war. But there were a lot of us, and we lived in what I suppose people would call a tenement now in North London, in Islington, in 2 rooms. And, frankly, you can't fit that many people into 2 rooms. So we were packed off back to Guyana to live with my aunt and grandmother. And I basically grew up there. I spent a few years back here in the middle, but most of my childhood was spent in what became Guyana, in a little tribe of brothers and sisters and cousins. We had a whole bunch of cousins. There's a lot of us.
So how old were you? So you were born here and then you went back at what age?
I was 15 months when they sent me back. And then I came back for a little while when I was 6 years old. And then, for reasons which I can go into if you want, I was packed off again at around 13 back to Guyana. The thing is that it wasn't that uncommon an experience, I think. And today, actually, particularly with West African families, where father's working somewhere else, you will see that families are separated in this way. I wasn't really conscious of this actually until quite recently. But when I came back at the age of 6, the family lived in a small house in North London. We had a couple of cousins living with us. So, I have 5 sisters, but 3 of them were at home with a cousin of us who's like another sister. And there were these 4 teenagers and young women who slept in the same room.
Yeah.
It was a very different sort of existence. And when I now remember it, when I came, my grandmother brought me to London, came on a boat, a Dutch boat. I wouldn't eat any of the food because it was foreign. She brought me up to the house, and she had to tell me which one of the women in the room was my mother.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not sure why I think that is so important, but it probably was quite important.
That's a huge moment because you were 6 years old.
Yeah. And, my father was a very, well, there are many things to say about my father. Charming understates it. I mean, he's a man of great charisma and so on. But he was a son of what we would now call a rag and bone man, who was also an alcoholic. So I never knew. In fact, I only knew one of my grandparents, my grandmother. I never knew him. And my father did not grow up with his own parents. He grew up with some distant relatives. He left school at 14. And he then went to work in the docks in Georgetown in Guyana. He taught himself pretty much everything new. He's because he's a great forceful personality, he rose a bit. But the reason that he came here, well, they're twofold. Two reasons. This was after the war. He had spent the war in the bush, in what we call in Guyana, the bush, in the jungle. Most of Guyana is virgin rainforest. And he had spent most of the war in a place called Mazaruni, which is a prison colony. And he was a quartermaster sergeant in the army. Mazaruni was a place where they sent Germans and Italians that they didn't want to escape.
Right.
Because it's almost impossible to get out of. Actually, it's still a prison facility, and there are no walls there because there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, gosh.
Anyway, so he spent most of the wartime down there. He came back, and he, I think, wanted to be the station master. And I'm telling you this to sort of give you a context and how far, for me, the main important thing about my life is how far it is from my grandparents' life and so on.
Yeah.
My father wanted to be the station master in a small railway station up country for various reasons, most to do with politics and who knew who and all the rest of it. He didn't get that. I think he was pretty angry and thought, I'm never going to get anywhere here. And my mother, who was in many ways, much more adventurous, thought that she didn't want to bring her as children, because I wasn't born then, up in a backwater, plus this thing that my sister wanted to be the nurse, is what brought them there. And the reason I go through all that rather extensive background is to say something about people who make this big journey. They travelled 3,000-4,000 miles into a place that they'd never been. I mean, we knew about it.
Yeah.
People talk about immigrants as sort of people who are fleeing war or hunger and so on. I think we don't often remember that these are that's true, but these are the ones who are the adventurous ones. Most people in the world stay where they are, or close to.
Yeah.
The people who make these big journeys, these big leaps into the dark, they're the crazy ones in the village. They're the adventurous ones. They're the ones who say, you know what, I'm not going to put up with this. I want more for me. I want more for my children. And I would say that was probably the spirit of my parents, and it's probably still the spirit of my family.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to quickly ask that you follow Gold Minds wherever you get your podcasts. By following, you'll get access to honest conversations about big stuff, career shifts, health challenges, mindset, and everything in between. Follow now and be part of this journey with us. Within the core of your family. And I suppose it moves us on nicely onto your first item that you brought to share with us here. Could you firstly just describe what this image is, and I suppose the emotions that it brings to you and what it represents to you?
Well, what we're looking at is a picture of a group of men, and there's a man holding, they're all wearing hats of the 1950s. You can tell what the era is. No man wears a trilby any longer. There's a man holding a microphone. He's obviously interviewing the man at the centre. The man at the centre, who is black, is the Calypsonian Lord Kitchener. And I think most people now will recognize this as the famous scene, which has been, I guess, immortalized by Pathé, in which Kitchener is interviewed at the bottom of the gangway, the Empire Windrush, having landed, brought 492 men and women from, in this case, Jamaica. They weren't all Jamaicans. And the chap says, what's it like and so on. And Kitchener, who had been composing on the way across, goes into his famous calypso. London is a place for me. And it's a kind of historic moment.
And that was what he wrote on the journey.
He wrote it on the journey.
Yeah.
Calypso is kind of, it was rap before rap.
Yeah.
In the sense that it's rhythmic, it's music, but it's about what is happening now. One of the nice things about Caribbean people is that we do not take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
Particularly given what I've done later in life, there is a tendency for people in public life and politics and so on to take themselves immensely seriously. And I find that, well, it's tedious anyway, but you lose perspective. One of the nice things is that people tend to focus, they're kind of, Jamaicans have this expression, soon come, which is a kind of, yeah, right, okay, fine. But and people make that a thing like, oh, they're lazy, they don't pay attention. But actually, I don't think it's that at all. I think it is that people in the Caribbean worry about things that you really need to worry about.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think my dad's Jamaican, and we actually had a trip back to Jamaica last year, which was an amazing experience.
I know, you did a documentary on it.
The documentary, yeah, Who Do You Think You Are? And I mean...
I think you hadn't been before, is that right?
So I'd never been, and my dad had not been back since he moved to Britain at the age of 13.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was a really emotional journey.
I saw some clips from it. I hadn't realised he hadn't been back.
Yeah, so he came over to Britain, I think 1964, as a 13-year-old. So at quite a crucial age for him, those teenage years where I don't think he really wanted to come here. Obviously, he didn't see the bigger picture of, what it would bring to his family and what it meant to his parents. But for him, it was just such a huge change. And I know you've spoken about this as well, the culture, but also just the basic things, the weather, the way life felt was just so different for him. So it was an amazing journey to go back, and a really emotive one for him. But going back to being very laid back, I remember walking around the airport with my dad, and we're kind of rushing for this flight, and he's walking so slowly. I'm like, Dad, come on, you've got to move a bit quicker than this. But then when we got to Jamaica, I was like, okay, I see it. This is why. And my dad was just so at home, Well, in the islands particularly, but it's true in Guyana too, they always know you're as they say, from foreign, because we walk faster, and we also queue up. Yeah,
we naturally go into a queue, and the minute you don't have to open your mouth or anything, the minute you do all of that, they're from England.
It's definitely true. This image, though, that it was so iconic and really stands the test of time. How did that shape your view of Britain?
When we did this, nobody really heard of Windrush. I'd spent... We made the documentary series Windrush or we put it out in 1998. It took 3 years to get from the idea to the screen. And nobody had heard about this boat. I knew a bit about it, hadn't really thought about it, but then the 50th anniversary of its landing was coming up, and I thought it might be interesting to go back and look at it. So I started to read up, and I did a little bit of research. And I realized two things. One was, just as a journalist, as a documentary maker, I thought, actually, this is one of those stories which has to be told now, because 50 years on, the men who were on that boat wouldn't be with us much longer.
Yeah.
And indeed, a number of them died in between our interview and the transmission.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you see the original transmission, there's a list of people who had died in between being interviewed and the film being transmitted.
And 50 years is a long period,
It's a long
isn't
period,
it, for it to come?
Indeed. And most of these guys, most of them had been young men who volunteered to fight in the war. One of them, I will always remember this, Dudley Thompson, who later became the foreign minister of Jamaica, actually, had flown fighters in the Battle of Britain. And he talked about going to the dentist. I'd asked him why he volunteered. He said he went to the dentist. He was waiting for the dentist, and there was a book there, and he picked up this book, and he started to read it, and it went on about how certain races were dirty, and people like him and me and you were described as savages, I think is the word he used, or it was used in this book. And he looked at it and he discovered it was Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler. And he said he resolved that day to come to England, and I won't use the exact terms, but basically kick Hitler's backside and go back home. And that's why he volunteered to be in the Air Force. He then explained that, and I heard this from some of the others, that some of the people he volunteered with, because they were schoolmates, these were boys.
Yeah.
They were late teens, early 20s, came, they flew, they died. So that in itself is just a compelling story. And we had the opportunity, I would say the responsibility to some extent, to record that story while we could get the first-hand testimony.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't know that. But the other reason, which is much more of a personal reason, my brother Mike and I, Mike is the proper writer in the family, but he writes thrillers, and he's the distinguished writer who wins prizes for his thrillers and all that. But Mike and I wanted to write this story for a very particular reason in our family. Most people who are descended from slaves have no history. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know who. The oldest recorded member of my family is a woman, ironically, called Happy, who was a slave in Barbados, and she was transported from Barbados to Guyana sometime in the 19th century. Her daughter, my great-grandmother, who's called Ellen, was a woman of mixed race. And in those days, I don't think that was a voluntary happening. So we know a little bit about our history, but not that much. But what Mike and I really wanted, because we grew up, I suspect rather like your father, in a world in which, you can get on, but people think that because of what you look like, they know who and what you are.
Yeah.
And they know what matters to you.
Yeah.
And we wanted to say there is more to us than, the Notting Hill Carnival or being discriminated against, or there are more things to us.
Yeah.
We have a story too.
Yeah.
And Windrush was our way of saying two things. This is our story, but our story is part of the British story. It's not some foreign thing. If you go through the book and the interviews with people, what you see is that these people weren't some sort of thing that only popped up every now and again when they were rioting, but all of them were people who are part of familiar issues in this country.
You know those mornings when you wake up and you feel like you've barely slept. Maybe your partner's been tossing and turning. Maybe you were too warm, or maybe your mattress has just seen better days. Sleep is where your body rebuilds, your mind resets, and those golden moments are made possible. That's why I've partnered with Simba. Their hybrid mattress is designed with cutting-edge technology to keep you cool, supported, and undisturbed through the night, so you can sleep deeper and recover better. With over 350,000 five-star reviews and more than 100 sleep awards, you can trust that Simba really are the experts in great sleep. So if you've been waking up achy, tired, or just not feeling at your best, maybe it's time to upgrade your mattress. With a 200-night risk-free trial and free next-day delivery, better sleep could literally be at your doorstep tomorrow. Shop at simbasleep.com/goldmines. On this podcast, I'm always inspired by people pushing themselves to new heights, and that same spirit comes through in David M. Robinson's latest collections. Each design captures a different side of life, and at the heart of them all is the same promise: stylish jewellery crafted to the very highest standards, with a level of detail that makes every piece feel truly special. From day-to-day pieces to iconic collections to bespoke items, DMR has something for everybody. Alongside jewellery, DMR are also retailers of leading luxury watch brands, so it's a perfect place to mark life's milestones. Discover the piece that could mark your own golden moment. Just head to the link in the description. Dream it, make it, love it. Yeah, and it's the story, isn't it? It's the personal lens behind it. And I think with obviously that image there, and we've got the footage here, we can play the moment with the song, which really just captures that kind of personality, doesn't it?
Yeah.
London is the place for me. London, this lovely city.
What do you think his expectations and aspirations were in that moment when he stepped off the ship?
Well, in Kitchener's case, I expect he was expecting and hoping to get some gigs, which in fact he did, and he became pretty famous, and he went back home and he was even more famous. But I'll tell you what I love about that. Loads of things. First of all, he references all parts of the world.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of tendency to think, oh, these guys, they come from the West Indies. That's what they know about. Actually, I think I don't think I know, because my experience, exactly the reverse is true.
Yeah.
If you live in a very big city, world city, you live in America and so on, it's quite easy to think that's the whole world. If you live in a small island, actually quite the reverse is true. You know that where you live is quite limited, so you're constantly looking out and you're paying attention.
Yeah.
So, first of all, he talks about the world. Second thing is, he is a kind of typical Caribbean charmer. The first thing he says, landing in a place, is, London, you're so lovely.
I know, yeah.
I love you. I think you're so fantastic. I mean, who is not going to be charmed?
Shower you with compliments.
Yeah, exactly. Who's not going to be charmed by a guy who the first thing he says to you is that you're wonderful?
Yeah.
And then just the kind of, as you use the word, the optimism and so on. I just love that. And I think that's the kind of person that I want to be. I want my children and grandchildren to be. And to some extent, actually, they're like all big families. We have our dramas. Yeah. And this year, this one's not talking to that one.
I need to know more about growing up in a family with 9 siblings.
Man.
I can't actually imagine. My husband's one of 4 boys, and I think their life must have been quite chaotic at home in the early days. But 10, what was life like? And also, how much of an influence did some of your siblings have on you growing up? Because there must have been some that you had stronger bonds with and had an impact on you more so.
Main thing is eat fast.
That's what my husband says.
Eat fast.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the number one basic thing. The second thing is a lot depends on where you are in the hierarchy.
Yeah.
Because of course, when I was born, my elder sister was already an adult. You know, so if she were here, she would spend the next hour explaining to you how she brought me up.
Yeah.
You know, because she took me out in the pram and so on. So I think that the thing about being in a family that large is there's a whole range of experiences and relationships. We're all very close, I think. We're a tribe. I guess I would have to say that I'm very, very close to my brother because I'm very fortunate that my older brothers were both blessed. I mean, particularly intellectually, you know. I've done a lot in my life, but I would say that my eldest brother and my brother Mike are smarter than I am by quite a distance. And I learned quite a lot particularly from Mike, because he explains things to me. And also the thing I've learned very late in life, which I didn't really understand when I was much younger, is that your family and those close to you have a very particular role in that they tell you who you are. I think that I probably didn't really understand much about myself, the sort of person I was, until I was well into my 40s. And the reason is because for most of my childhood, I had grown up. My next sibling, my sister, to who I'm close, is 6 years older than me. So I wasn't an only child, but, you know, and I wasn't a lonely child either, but I was quite distant.
Yeah. What was your dynamic in your relationship with your parents, though? Because I'm just thinking about it from my perspective with my dad. And I suppose I only kind of see it more so now that I'm slightly older. And I think he looks back at his childhood very differently in his later life, particularly going back to Jamaica as well. So for him, there's that feeling of, you know, he didn't want to come to Britain, but he came. He had to. He's had a great life. He's done amazing things. He's got his kids and his family here. But I think in later life now, he does feel that sense of almost a bit of abandonment from his parents, that they came over to Britain first. They stayed at home with the grandparents. Then my dad and his brother then came over to Britain, and his parents then moved to America for work. So there's this feeling of we're never quite with our parents, and they've since died now. But he definitely has a lot of, you know, emotional tie there, where he feels that maybe they weren't there as much with him.
Your father's almost probably a couple of years older than I am, but more or less contemporary. And my parents also moved to America.
Oh, did
later
they?
On, yeah.
Is that a very common thing to do?
I don't know if it was common, but it wasn't surprising.
Yeah.
And it wasn't surprising for two reasons. One is, I mean, I don't know about your family, but my family always had a branch in the United States from the beginning of the 20th century, because, you know, the history of it is that people would go cotton picking in the South from the islands.
Yeah.
My grandmother, her husband went to the United States and then disappeared.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that. I know it sounds sort of awful and tragic and so on, but in the background that we come from, families falling apart, being separated, was not that uncommon. And if you look at the history, you know, these people were 2 generations away from a situation in which your husband, partner, or your children could just disappear in the night. Somebody just take them away. And that's not a tragedy. That's just the way life was. So anyway, my grandfather, Joseph, went to New York. I'm going to come back to the question you asked in a second. But my grandfather, Joseph, went to New York. I suspect he jumped off the boat when it came into harbour, swam ashore because that's what people did. Disappeared into Harlem. I had a great aunt, my great aunt Muriel, who's a legend in our family. She died at the age of 104, but never admitted to being more than 100.
Oh, really?
Yeah, would not admit to being more than 100.
Oh, I'd own it. I'd be like, I'm 104. That's incredible.
Oh, no, but, a woman's got to...
Still want to stay young.
But she was... the reason she had to leave Guyana, here's the family story I've never talked about. The reason she had to leave Guyana is because a chap in the next village fell in love with her. And she with him. The unfortunate part was the chap already had a wife.
Oh dear.
So there was a little bit of kerfuffle. And these are small villages where these things assume a very big importance.
Travel very quickly.
And really, I don't quite understand why this would be, but the man's wife objected. I mean, what's wrong with her?
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, but she was... literally, last week, my sister sent me a photograph she'd found of Muriel, and she's very beautiful, 17-year-old. And her mother said, look, too much trouble, you're going to America. So she sent her off to America. And Muriel started this, the branch of our family in Harlem. And my parents, this is a long and roundabout way of saying that at the end of the 1960s, we'd been here as a family for 17, 18 years. And my parents both got restless, didn't, I think, like the look of things. And they thought, actually what I think they were doing was they were going back to Guyana via New York visiting.
Okay,
They got stuck in New York.
Yeah.
And we are now a half American family. Yeah. Really, half of my family lives in America. I've got, New York, Florida, California now, a lot in Toronto. But we are, what is the truth here? We're a family that is always looking to see, can we do better?
Yeah.
Particularly for our children. And I think coming back to your dad, I think it's just, like lots of people, I imagine he didn't want to come here. Why would you leave your friends behind, the way of life and so on?
With the FIFA World Cup coming up in Seattle 2026, I've been thinking about the places that give you the best of both worlds, a vibrant city and the space to recharge. That's why Seattle stands out. They call it Mother Nature's city, and you'll see why the moment you arrive. Picture this, a morning run along the waterfront, followed by incredible food and world-class art in the heart of downtown. Few cities let you do all that in one day. Seattle is inclusive, welcoming, and full of energy. It's a city that invites you to explore. Whether it's savouring fresh seafood at Pike Place Market, diving into its legendary coffee culture, or soaking up the views of Phuket Sound and the mountains beyond. Imagine the world's biggest sporting events set against this backdrop of natural beauty and urban excitement. For me, Seattle is a perfect mix of adventure and inspiration. It's at the top of my list, and it should be on yours too. Discover more at visitseattle.org and start planning your perfect summer of football.
And I imagine if he arrived in 1964, it wouldn't have been that amenable. One of the reasons I think that my family, as I said, I came here when I was 6 and then they sent me back when I was 12. One of the reasons that they decided to send me back to Guyana rather than to take me to America, because that's when they went, was that for a young black man, this was not a good place to be.
Yeah.
It was not a great place to be. I suspect your father is a remarkable person who fought his way through all of that, and sometimes literally fought his way through all of that, and created a family and settled and so on. But I think it would have been, I was lucky I didn't have to do that, but I suspect it was very tough for people.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think I only now really appreciate what life must have been like for him during that time, because, the stories that, he speaks about and tells us now, as you know, I have a sister as well, and we're both adults. It's, you know, it's so hard to believe that you can endure that.
And I'll tell you what, forgive me, I'll tell you what I think would have been the hardest thing for him, to protect you two from that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? He did a great job, because I think about my teenage years at school, and I can probably recount one occasion where I felt really impacted by, you know, awful racial comment, because I didn't feel, you know, I just felt like I was exactly like my friends.
Yeah.
And, you know, my parents did a fantastic job of, like you say, protecting us. But there was one occasion, and, you know, it makes me think now that that was just like life for him all the time. And it's not just about, you know, the initial environment you're in, the work environment, but it was like buying a house, you know, how challenging that was, how everything was just like a constant battle. So for someone like my dad and many other black men at that time, you feel like you're in constant fight or flight all the time.
Yeah.
Not able to.
And I
move.
I mean, our parents would have worked really hard not to bring that home. I mean, you know, maybe some other families were different, but I certainly know in my family, you know, nobody's sort of, nothing was particularly hidden, but I think that the story you get told about yourself in a good family is what you can be.
Yeah.
Not what people want to stop you being.
Yeah.
But I suspect that yours was rather like mine, which is that the conversation is about what next? What can we do? How can we lift you up?
I'd love to go into your golden moment, though.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, you can describe what you've brought in a second, but this was a really key moment in your life, but also such a huge moment for, you know, so many people in this country. And just to, I think I'm right in saying that, you know, within Black communities, Windrush was something that we were all very aware of, but in the wider world and to, you know, more Britons, they actually didn't understand what that process was, those individual stories, and you were able to bring that to the forefront of people's minds.
Well, you know, when we pitched, when we came up with the thought of doing something on this, I think it's probably fair to say that not even within Black communities was there any consciousness of the significance of that moment. And to be absolutely fair, you know, we chose Windrush. We could have chosen half a dozen other boats. Windrush was significant because it wasn't actually the first, but it was significant because of who was on that boat, because there were the airmen, because there had been people who'd been in the war and they had a particular story. But I think it's fair to say that almost nobody was aware of the iconic status of it. And that sounds like I'm going to say how fantastic it was that we came up with it, but we didn't. The story was there. I was lucky enough to think about doing it, and I had, because I had a history in television, you know, I'd run current affairs for ITV and so on. But as I said earlier on, I wanted to tell the story because I wanted people to understand that there was more to me and people like me than they thought. And it's probably worth saying, by the way, that if you go through the book or watch this documentary series, there's nothing about my family in it. And that's deliberate.
Yeah.
I didn't do the narration myself. Mike is in the film, I'm not. And the reason is because I wanted it to be the story of both of the community, but of the country. The way I thought about the Windrush story was that there's a tapestry of British history, and there are many threads in it, and the thread to which I and my family belonged had somehow been taken out, and what we were doing was restoring that thread to the history. It was very difficult to get made. I had to leave my job in ITV. That is the risk that I took. Really? In the same way as I think you took a risk to deliver your golden moments. I hadn't thought about it this way before this moment. I gave up what was really pretty comfortable, good job. I, could have been probably done something more in television than I did. But I so wanted to tell this story, I had to leave. And I then spent 18 months basically in the wilderness. We brought it to the BBC, and because I think in the end it had to be the national broadcast, and there was something right about it being the national broadcaster. It took a year to persuade them, first of all, that it was right to do, and secondly, that we could do it. And that here is, if you like, the edgy bit. If I am straight about it, there weren't any minority-led production companies at that time. I'd started one.
Did you have to do that straight away? There wasn't a case of you tried to go to other production companies?
No.
Was that not even an option for
It wasn't
you?
an option because I didn't want anybody else telling the story.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one that I'm not a kind of race or sex essentialist. I don't believe you have to be the thing and all that. But I think in this particular case, there had to be a kind of authenticity, the right reflexes to decide what is right. And at that time, the stories that everybody wanted to tell about minorities was about how badly we were treated. It was a story in which we had no agency.
Yeah.
And my big thing was, this was a story about what families like mine did, not what was done to them. It then all worked out pretty well. Everybody thought, wow, great story. We won. My golden moment was winning Documentary Series of the Year at Royal Television Society, which is, not many people get that.
And that's the trophy that you brought in today.
That's the trophy I brought in, yeah.
And, did you, I imagine for you at the time of making the documentary and just having it out there must have been just a winning moment, like a huge winning moment in itself, but having the award as well and that recognition must have been a huge bonus and sense of achievement there.
It was amazing, and it was amazing for me and for Mike. It was also amazing because the team we'd assembled.
Yeah.
The two things that came out of it for me, one was the team we assembled was, generally speaking, to make it, was of quite young people who hadn't done very much. And I can say, just to give an example, I know she won't mind, I hope she won't mind me saying this, the associate producer on it is a young woman called Anne Mensah. Anne Mensah went on to become a great producer, and she now runs Netflix in this country, in actually outside the United States.
Wow.
Yeah,
she's got a big role then.
She's got, yeah. I mean, it's fantastic. If you're a boss, there are two ways in which you can think about things. You can think, how did such and such become that thing? Or you can think, like I do, she's that thing because she worked for me. And I'm so proud that the people who worked on that show have gone on to the guy who directed it, David Upshaw's gone on to make fantastic work. So in a way, the golden moment is golden in itself, but it carries a glow. With Windrush, almost from the moment we did it, it escaped us. The fundamental thing is, as I said, what we wanted to do was not to tell, quote, a black story, but to tell a British story, to restore an important thread of this country's history, which is important for everybody, whatever colour or background they come from, that says something important about who we are as a nation. And, as I say, even if I'm a bit miffed every now and again that nobody really associates it with Mike and me, I'm beyond comfortable, beyond proud of the way that it has now become a thing, as the young people say. It's a thing.
It's a thing, definitely. Obviously, we know the legacy around the documentary and what that's created in our culture and our society now, but what legacy has it created in your family?
It's a project that I share with my brother, really. And, we were close anyway. There are very few things of significance that I do in my life where I don't ask his advice. But doing this and then returning to it a couple of years ago means that he and I are constantly talking about this story and what it means.
Yeah.
So in a way, it keeps us close, but it also means that we're sort of developing the idea, and we're kind of thinking, what kind of people are we? What should we be saying? So, some of the things that I might say publicly is not just Trevor talking, it's Trevor and Mike.
Yeah. And how has it influenced you as a parent?
It's made me less shy about saying to my daughters, not be proud of who you are, because you'd say that anyway, but be very conscious of what you bring into the world.
Yeah.
We talked a bit about what's special about being a Caribbean person. And I think maybe what it did for me with my daughters was free me to say to them, their mother is Indian. You have more than one heritage, and both of them are amazing inheritances. And there's so much that you can take from both of them. And you don't have to be like anybody else.
Yeah.
You can be who you are. And, you don't have to kind of go about boasting about it. But what you are stands up against anything else. And I just at a very concrete level, I would say to my children, I'm not going to go about saying, I'm a sir now and all of that. But I am 1, 2, 3, 4 generations away from a slave, from a woman who had no control over her life. And in fact, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I realized, my father he came here, he worked in the post office, railway, did a decent job. Then he went to America, and America gave him the chance in his late 50s to do qualifications. He became essentially a bookkeeper, and ended up with a prestigious white-collar job on the campus of Columbia University. He became the man that when he was 16 years old, I think he thought he could be. And it took him more than 45 years to achieve that. And then he died. He died quite young. He died at 61. My mother, on the other hand, her grandmother, my great-grandmother, who was a daughter of a slave, was a housemaid and a seamstress. She sewed for a living. My mother was a housemaid and sewed for a living.
Really?
And when I say the reason I talk about that to my children is to say, look at the distance we have travelled as a family.
I'd love to talk to you about your daughter, and I know if it's something that you don't want to speak
No,
about.
I'm very happy to
I
talk to her.
completely understand. But you obviously had an awful time when you lost your daughter. Could you just tell us a little bit about her as a person and what happened?
Well, Sushila is my daughter. She was born 1984, and she was, all parents will say this, but objectively, she was pretty clever, very likable, I think. When she was 16, she essentially had a kind of a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
And it manifested as an extreme eating disorder, anorexia. And she was right at these things are a spectrum. And she was right at the very end of the spectrum. I mean, really, at a place which is unreachable. And there's a paradox about that, because most people recover
Yeah.
one way or they learn to manage it. There's a very small number who do not, and they die, and they die quite quickly. What was unusual about Sushila, and this tells you something about her character, she just refused to die. She lived with it for 22 years. And I'll say two things about her. When at her funeral, I spoke to her consultant, and he said a couple of things about her. One is that she was, in a hospital for long periods, that she was essentially a militant advocate for the girls in the ward and kept them up to scratch and very, she at one point she'd qualified, she did very well at university, she was going to go into Magic Circle law firm, but the illness meant that she just couldn't sustain it. Yeah. But she basically was the lawyer for the girls. But the other thing he said to me was that he'd talked to her previous consultant who hadn't seen her for some years, and he said, what can you tell me about her? And that previous consultant said, my God, I assume she must have died by now. That's how seriously ill she was. The night before she died, she went to the health food shop. And, one can talk endlessly about people who have this condition and the strange things they do. Anyway, she was in the health food shop and she collapsed. And the wonderful person in the health food shop gave her CPR. By the time the ambulance arrived, and she sat up.
Yeah.
And she said, what happened? And the person said, I gave you CPR. And she said to this person, who told you to do that? Oh. She knew, I talked to her, and she sort of knew where she was going with this. In fact, that evening, after this all happened, they took her home. They took her home after she had finished having a fag. She said, I'm not getting in the ambulance until I finish my cigarette. So I'm giving you a picture of a person, of the sort of person she is. And she rang me and she said, better come now or else say goodbye on the phone. And we all went to her flat. And we were there overnight, and first thing in the morning, she's gone.
I can't imagine how you even deal with that. I mean, I've got a daughter, I've got a son, and it's the worst thing that could happen to anyone to experience that and to see your daughter suffering for that amount of time as well.
It is, but what can I say? I can't describe what it feels like, but I comfort myself with two things. One is that we had many years of her, and my daughters are were and are very close to me. They're confidants. They tell me things that I need to hear. So we had a lot of time together, I think. And secondly, people don't disappear.
No,
they're in your memory, and I have a particular things that I do that mean that I think about her every single day, every day.
Yeah,
and that's. I don't know if that makes life easier, but it's the
memory's always there.
Yeah, she's right there. She's. I can't. There's a saying in the Jewish community which, when she died, some friends said, "May her memory be a blessing." And I said to a friend, I don't understand what that means. And there are lots of different explanations, but he gave me what I thought was most compelling explanation, which is that all of us leave an imprint on all of the people we meet in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
We're changed by, I'm changed by having met you, and so on. He said to me, the way you need to think about this is that all the people who are around Sushila were changed in some way by her, and you can, in a way, compose her memories through those changes, and those are people that it's a real living thing. And because I've tried to describe some of the strength of her character, you could imagine the impact she had on
so
other
many
people.
Yeah.
And I believe that. I believe that in our family, and funny enough, my father died when I was 17, 18. But to this day, his presence still exists in our family. Nobody would ever say, what would Daddy think about this? But it shapes what we do and what we think. And I think there's something of that in the imprint that Sushila has left.
And in her sister as well. You must see so much of her in her sister.
I mean, now we've got a couple of grandchildren. We'll see something of that in them. But, we've been talking about my family as a whole. And, I mean, I don't know what it's like for other people. I cannot imagine not being part of this tribe. And one of the things about the tribe is that it has continuity. You're all individuals, but you're also part of this thing. And when somebody leaves the tribe to go on to wherever the next place is, they've still left an imprint. So I can talk to you about my father. I can talk to you about my Aunt Muriel.
Yeah, and it's the stories, isn't it?
It's their story. But they're, in some ways, they're still as alive as when they were physically with us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think around your daughter's illness, there's such a big conversation there. And it's like mental health is something that I'm so I did psychology at uni. Psychology is always something that really fascinates me. And eating disorders and the pressures that young girls face. I mean, you must see it in your industry now more than ever. It's almost getting worse. And what do we need to do as a society?
I think there are two things. One is I think that I wouldn't be a teenager now.
No.
I think this whole thing about, perfection and what you should be like and so on. I worry a lot about it. I think a lot of it is cruel, actually. And it doesn't have to be Mean Girls.
Yeah.
You can impose that on yourself.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is happening. I think, though, that one thing that we can do is remind people what true mental illness is about. I think there is now slight fashion for sadness, the ups and downs of life, to be described as mental illness. Sushila was not sad.
Yeah.
She was, in a previous age, she would have been described as tormented by demons. I mean, genuinely incapable. I mean, and as I keep saying, this was an incredibly strong personality. And she would say she can't fight this one. Her illness she described as her, can't fight her. Because the voice in my head. And I think one thing that is I really wish people, particularly prominent people, would, is stop saying, I have mental health issues. you might feel sad. You might need some help or talking therapy or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's a very, very different business. You know, until you have had to pin your own daughter to the floor in the back of a speeding car to stop her throwing herself out of the car because she so wants to die, you do not understand what true illness is, what true torment is. So, you know, it's maybe a slightly bleak message, but I think prominent people could help by just helping young people separate things from which they will recover, things for which they may need a little help, from true sickness. You know, I've spent time in the wards, and particularly with young women with eating disorders, that is what the seventh circle of hell is like, and that's a whole different thing. You got to understand that.
I mean, I've visited one of the mental health units in Sheffield before, and it really surprised me how one of the practitioners there and the consultants were saying that actually it's eating disorders that is something that they see so often. Like, why is that? What is it? Something that's changed within society? Is it social media? Is it something that sparked something in the young girls, or is it something that's always been there but we just hear more?
Honestly, Jess, I don't know. And one of the things I would also say is people who tell you they know are lying. I think one of the things that we could do is invest more in understanding it. Yeah. Because we don't understand it.
Yeah.
And people who go about saying, oh yeah, I know what the reason is. It's the mothers. They blame the mothers also. Just shut up, really, because it's trivializing the agony that young people face. She suffered. I mean,
but I think
she suffered.
And I think, like you said, though, she's very much still a part of your tribe. You know, she's imprinted on every sibling and every member of your family, and you have this beautiful legacy and passion that runs through the core of your family, which, you know, I've been, you know, very happy to get to know a little bit more about you, and then we go on to where you are now and the legacy of everything. Your third item is your books, and the first one is this was released in 1998, and then your second book, 2023, which really touches on, you know, the aftermath of what came after that documentary.
Yeah, I mean, the first Windrush book is titled, and the subtitle is The Irresistible Rise of Multiracial Britain, and that was really to say there's something very interesting about this country, and literally, I had not thought about this before this moment, but probably of all of the people that I can think of in the entire world embodies this, it's you.
Really?
Yeah. This is the only country in which there is a significant mixed race population of size that hasn't come about through something horrible. The other places where there is such that are South Africa, horrible.
Yeah.
Brazil, slavery. America, slavery. You happened since the war. And that's entirely voluntary. That's entirely about people who met each other, fell in love, have families. This is the only country in the world where actually that has happened at scale. It's really, and I've spent 10, 15 years looking around the world to see whether that's true elsewhere. Maybe one day it'll be true in Australia. It isn't now.
Yeah.
But there are more people of Caribbean heritage in this country who are like you now, who've got a white parent, than are like me.
Really?
And that's really, really unusual. And I say that because the point about Windrush, I really don't like it when it's associated with the word scandal, but because the point about Windrush is that that's a special heritage, and it says something so wonderful about our country that can happen, and it hasn't happened anywhere. Not in France, not in the Netherlands, not in Germany. It happened here, and that should tell us something. That's what this book, the latest edition of the book, in a way says, that we should learn, and the rest of the world should learn, that there's something that we do in this country that nobody else does that makes it possible for there to be a Jessica Ennis-Hill. I mean, that's, to me, the real... that's the golden thread, actually. That's the thing that I hope in 50 years people will say about that book.
Yeah, that's that just kind of, it sums it up beautifully.
I'd never thought about it until sitting here opposite you. that you are
here staring you in the face.
That you're the special. You're the special product.
Well, I don't think I'm the special product, but
you know
I completely agree with what you're saying. It shows that change in society, that integration, the next wave, the next generation of people who look like me doing amazing things and having an imprint on our beautiful country.
And it'll be my daughter rather looks like me. My grandson Ocean. It happens they live in Ibiza for the moment. Looks Spanish.
Oh, really?
But it won't feel odd to anybody to see me walking down the street with him in this country.
Yeah.
In the United States, it will be odd.
Yeah.
It will be odd. Not hostile odd, but odd.
Yeah.
Here, it's the way we are, and I don't know. I think that's fantastic.
I do.
That's why I live here.
I absolutely agree. Thank you so much for chatting to me today. It's been so lovely just to hear a bit more about you, Trevor, your background and where you've come from, what it took to create this incredible documentary and the legacy beyond that. So I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Well, thank you, Jess. And thank you for making me talk about things that I normally avoid talking about.
Oh no, I really appreciate it.
So now all my siblings are going to hear about this, and they're going to be saying, "Why did you talk to her about that and not to us?"
They're going to be proud of you. They'll be very, very proud of you. Thank you, Trevor.